how much is misinformation affecting the debate, the very legitimate debate around crime, migrants and asylum seekers? Generally speaking, you'll know that police are warning people with huge social media followings to not share material that is factually untrue. We also had a situation this week where Ryland Clark, the TV presenter, he was on this morning and he was criticised by some and praised by others for raising concerns about migration. But how much of what he said was factually true? How much of what people say about the migrant debate is factually true? Do we still care about the truth? Whose truth is it? If you're worried about migrants, you should absolutely be able to have a platform to say what you think, to say what your concerns are. But do you feel that you have a responsibility to get your facts right? Or would you say that doesn't matter? And that as long as you've done your research, inverted commas, that you have maybe cut and pasted something from somewhere, you haven't checked it, but you trust the person from which it comes, from whom it comes, that's good enough? Or do we actually have a responsibility to get our facts right? And I know things have shifted over the last 10 years, and a lot of you have less trust than you did before in the so-called mainstream media. But do we need to keep a grip on facts? And does that, I don't know, does that just make any debate that we have better, healthier? It doesn't mean that you can't have an opinion, but does that opinion have to be surrounded by facts? Let's have a listen to what Ryland said. He was speaking on This Morning on Wednesday, and Rylan Clark expressed his view on the small boats issue.
A lot of the nurses, the doctors that have saved my mum's life have come over here from other countries, are living a great life, they're paying into this tax system, they're helping this country thrive. I find it absolutely insane that all these people, one, are risking their lives coming across the channel like that they are, but two, when they get here, it does seem, and I think this is why a lot of Labour voters as well are now sitting there going, there's something wrong here. It seems, welcome, come on in. This is the narrative we're being fed. Here's the hotel. Here's the phones. Here's the iPad. Here's the NHS in reception of your hotel. Here's 3 meals a day. Here's a games room in the hotel. Have a lovely time and welcome. And then there's people that have lived here all their lives that are struggling. Yeah. They're homeless. Let's not even discuss our homeless. That are people living on the streets, veterans, all of this. Yeah. Now, this isn't me getting on my soapbox because let me be honest, everyone's going to have an opinion about this and you're going to upset someone some which way. I believe that something major needs to be done about this. The money that it's costing us, the amount of people that are in this country that we have no idea who they are, what they've done, what they're capable of, and clearly we see a lot of it in the press at the moment, some of what some are doing, it's not all, what some are doing to people in this country. How can, if I turn up at Heathrow Airport as a British citizen and I've left my passport in Spain, I've got to stand at that airport and won't be let in and got to get this, but if I arrive on a boat in Calais, I get taken to a 4-star hotel.
Right, that was Rylan Clark speaking on This Morning on Wednesday. There's quite a few different sections to that. First of all, he talks about legal migration. Then he talks about small boats and the reception that people who arrive on small boats get, the treatment that they get. Then he talks about homeless people and he talks about cost of living. And then he talks about something to do with Heathrow Airport, which I don't quite get. But anyway, he makes some really interesting and very valid points. But is 100% of what he said there factually true? Aggie Chambre is LBC's political correspondent. Hi, Aggie.
Hello.
Try and fact check as much of this as we can. I don't know how much responsibility there is on Rylan Clark he's not a journalist, to get everything right. But let's try and as much as we can, because I think it's much easier to have a debate when you actually know the facts. So he said, I think he was generalising, but he said migrants are small boat arrivals are put in 4-star hotels. Is that true?
Yeah, yes, but, and I think this is what is difficult about a lot of what he says. There is a huge amount of what he says that is true, and some of it is not true. So in terms of 4-star hotels, yes, that is true. However, if you speak to people within the government, they would say the Conservatives opened a lot of 4-star hotels, but now they don't work as 4-star hotels effectively. There's a lot of room sharing and a lot of the facilities are closed. So were they to be looked at now, whether they were still a 4-star hotel, potentially the answer would not be yes. But that, on the face of it, categorically true. But it's really interesting listening to him, isn't it? Because he sort of puts in the caveats of saying, well, this is what it seems like and this is the narrative being fed, but then goes on to talk about it as if that's what he believes.
Because a narrative, if you look it up, is a way of presenting facts. It's a story. It's not the facts. But maybe he was. I don't know. You know, we'll get into anyway. We'll get into that in a minute. We'll get into that. It's so interesting. Okay, 3 meals a day. I mean, would we expect to feed people 3 meals a day, or 2, or 1?
So you will get, if you are waiting if you've applied for asylum and you're waiting for the decision, you will usually get £49.18 for each person in your household, and that will help you pay for things you need like food, clothing and toiletries. But if your accommodation provides your meals, then you'll get £9.95 for each person instead.
Right.
So it's not clear how many meals that will be, but I guess you could decide how many meals you wanted to spend with that money.
Phones and iPads. Does everyone get a phone and an iPad?
No. So in the past, some charities have given out old phones, old iPads, especially during COVID, but that is not something that the Home Office gives out. Okay.
NHS and the reception of the hotel?
No, but most people would get access to the NHS when they were waiting for their asylum decision to be reached. So they would get access to NHS dentistry, NHS free eyesight tests, help paying for glasses, but that wouldn't be in the lobby of your hotel.
Right. Now, there is some misinformation around what actually what the experiences of people who come in on small boats. And of course, there's some people who just say, well, they shouldn't be getting anything. They should just be deported straight away. That's not the current system. So we have to deal with the current system, whether you like it or not. The current system is that they are put in some hotels, some centres, and while they're there, they are going to be fed and housed. They can't work. But they have to be fed and they have to be housed. And I don't know how, again, do you know roughly off the top of your head, what kind of period of time are we talking about? Some of these people will be in these centres or hotels for quite a long time.
That's right. I mean, so and it's worth saying as well, there is this new law that's just come in, the 1 in, 1 out scheme, which actually means that some people, as soon as they arrive on a small boat, will actually be detained immediately, basically immediately, and then they would be deported. That at the moment, I think, is about 1 to 18. So it's very, very small numbers at the moment. But in terms of the time frame, I mean, basically what would usually happen is you would be in a processing centre for 24 hours or so and then move to a hotel, and that could be a matter of weeks, a matter of months until you get the response on asylum. And then if you were granted asylum, effectively at that point the Home Office taps out and then you're kind of out on your own. But of course at that stage you are then eligible to seek benefits and out of work benefits and things like that.
So presumably people who are in these centres for months, I mean, it's not a parallel to say that they're in a prison, because they're not, but they are kind of restricted. They're inside. There's no point in them. I mean, they can go out obviously, but they can't work. So they're probably spending quite a lot of time indoors, and therefore, I suppose there is there, I don't know, a contractual, for some people, there's a contractual liability to do something with them. And that's where this balloon story has come from this morning. Thousands of pounds, according to The Sun, being blown on hiring staff to teach balloon craft and floristry to migrants facing the boot. Painting and hairdressing tutors and a gym boss also wanted for Heathrow Immigration Removal Centre, where detainees include serious criminals. I'm just reading this from The Sun. Now, this was confirmed, and last night the Home Office Minister Seema Malhotra said the department had asked for the roles to be scrapped. She said, "We don't believe all these roles are necessary and have told the Home Office to speak to Mighty," that's the contracting firm, "to remove them." So sometimes it sounds mad, but it is true. This is the case for for one removal centre that they were advertising for people to put on this stuff to occupy the people who are in these centres. So sometimes it's true and sometimes it's not.
And I think this is where we come back to the point, the conversation we were having at the beginning about a narrative. And I think when people see stories like that, I mean, the Tories have commented too, saying the government's lost the plot. And indeed, the Home Office Minister immediately is saying to Mighty, please get rid of these. So that seems like it sounds ridiculous to everybody, really, that's looked at that story. But I think that's why we get back to the narrative of people see that and think that seems ridiculous. How big a problem is that? And it's been really interesting this week speaking to people within government about small boats, about their agenda going forward, because of course from Monday we're back in the game, recess is over. And one of the things that I think the government has started talking a lot more about internally is a sense of fairness. And they are worried that people in the country feel there is a huge amount of unfairness going on. And that's something that they are trying to work out basically what to do about, really.
Yeah.
And small boats is a massive issue within that, because they feel people see small boats coming over and think that people in small boats are given accommodation, are given money, and then their high street is getting more dilapidated. And it's something I'm told Rachel Reeves is actually thinking about when she's thinking about what's going to go into the budget, the fact that people feel they're putting more and more and more in and getting less and less out. But when I say to people, well, what are you going to do about that? They do say, well, we do something about the boats, we need to deliver, and we need to make sure that everything is a bit more fair. And that doesn't feel at this stage that tangible. And that's why you get into these kind of difficult conversations where people do just feel that everything is a bit unfair.
Yeah. It's a difficult question, but I'll ask it anyway. Do you think that the government... some people say, oh, God, why won't the government do something? Why doesn't Keir Starmer just stand up and say something, intervene in all of this before it gets worse? The debate around, which is sometimes, not always, it sometimes has some misinformation around it, about migrants, about hotels, about crime, etc. Are they a bit paralysed and they don't quite know what to do? Or do they feel that they don't need to respond to something that perhaps they don't experience themselves?
I think it's a real mix of things. I mean, I think the government would probably point to the fact that Keir Starmer did make a real set-piece intervention about migration a few months ago. And that speech was actually pretty widely criticised by some in his party because of that line in it where he talked about an island of strangers, which he has since said he regretted and he hadn't read the speech properly before he gave it. But they would probably point to that intervention. Yeah. But there's also, of course, the politics of it all. And that's the fact that the Labour Party is incredibly worried about Reform UK. They see them as the real opposition. And so I don't think that they will want to be ceding too much ground to them on migration, much to the worry of some on the left of their party.
OK. Aggie, thank you very much for that. Aggie Chambre, LBC's political correspondent.